Hi, everyone. Welcome to our first episode of 2025. Excited to be with you all today. I'm here with my co host, Matthew Lind, out in Austin, Texas. Hey, Matthew.
Hello, Happy New Year. Fun fact, New Year is my favorite holiday of the year. So I just say it as long as possible. I don't care how far into January or maybe even February it is. I just keep wishing people a Happy New Year, especially if I haven't talked to them yet. So Jean and Thomas, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. And as you mentioned, like today we have the wonderful pleasure of speaking with Thomas Maier, who currently works at Bitly in their revenue operations, but has a career of working with Gainsight and customer success operations. So it's just a pleasure to have you here as our first guest in 2025, Thomas.
Thanks a ton. Happy New Year and glad to sit down with you guys. I've been looking forward to it since you guys started doing this.
Awesome. Well, we're glad to have you. I'm pleased to have you here because I've gotten to know you on several different levels, several occasions. But for people who don't know Thomas or can't pronounce Meyer, tell us about yourself and how you got into CS Ops, how you got to where you are now.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I broke into tech through a local company in Houston and started off as a like a tech support agent and did that for a little while and then moved into customer success. That company happened to get Gainsight, and that Gainsight implementation happened to not go so hot. And so I took over as their, power user adoption champion and admin. And I've been focusing on that and more broadly customer success operations ever since. Although, as you guys mentioned, I'm in revenue operations now, so I handle money, which is like one of my big phobias. But it's been very gratifying to learn a little bit about that side of business as well.
That's so cool. So like you started in tech support. So you was there anything that like really kind of wowed you on the other side, or when you aside from maybe this project that was like didn't work out and you wanted to jump in maybe and win the battle, was there anything that was on that other side that kind of lulled you or pulled you in, or that was super attractive and you just couldn't forget about it and you had to jump in?
Yeah, I think the defining factor of especially early stage customer success operations are the building. You're really constructing things for customers. Sometimes you're building the plane on the runway. And I really like building things, both at work and outside of work. I think it's really satisfying to take your own two hands and your brain and make something new.
I know, actually, I know an interesting fact about you, that you are incredibly correct and accurate in saying that you like building stuff outside of work, because I know that you're also a smith and you like to hammer metal into things. So you definitely take the building to the next level.
Yeah, that's been my kind of combined therapy and gym outside of work, right? It's really fun. I've been doing it for about 6 or 7 years. And at this point, I would describe myself as a pretty mediocre blacksmith. Pretty shoddy work, honestly. I wouldn't buy anything from myself.
But it must be therapeutic just to go hammer some metal
It
whenever
is.
something isn't working out correctly.
Yeah, and that feeling of kind of carrying on with something tactile, connecting with our labor, I think is very important, and it's gotten really popular, right? It's exploded in popularity, especially since that TV show Fortune Fire came out. We get a lot of people who come out with little kids, older kids, all ages, who just want to make something, that they can take home and say, I shaped this thing.
Yeah, that's so cool.
I feel like we could have like the world's best shop class between Thomas. I'm thinking about Travis Floyd, who we had on last year, who's a woodworker, and he has all the stuff on his shelving behind him of like toys he's made for his family and stuff like that. So it's amazing. All I could think of at blacksmithing is I would undoubtedly burn myself, and so I probably between that and glass blowing, I'd be like, those are the hobbies I'd stay away from because I'd toast my fingers or something.
it definitely happens, and you get really good at discreetly burning yourself and then excusing yourself so you can go like ow, 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 and cry about it when nobody can see you.
All right. All right. I love it. Sounds not so unlike CS Ops. You have to discreetly cry every once in a while, right? We're against that data load. We're like, I don't understand. But I digress, or I don't, as the case may be. But Thomas, one of the things I hear you talk about a lot is infrastructure. You're always big on infrastructure or laying solid foundations. Tell us about that. Like when you think of building a gain site, you could expand it out to CS ops, rev ops, whatever kind of level you want to take this at. How do you build the foundation that you know is necessary to sustain for the long term?
Yeah, that's kind of a multi-layered thing, right? Because originally my background kind of led me into software infrastructure, digital infrastructure, and cloud ops. And that's definitely part of it, right? You need a solid technical backbone to any system that you're running. But what I've come to really appreciate about operations in general is that part of infrastructure is processes and workflows and especially lines of responsibility. So drawing those up is just as much, I think, part of establishing program infrastructure as setting up integrations and connectors and APIs and all that sort of thing. So I don't know. I think both are equally important, and I find a lot of satisfaction in mapping those out with people and, getting an agreement that this is the web of complex processes. Let's make it simple, and then we can get into the weeds and talk about specifics.
I love this definition of infrastructure that goes past. I think some people would think of a server farm or a tool that can handle, or maybe even in this day and age, AI. And okay, well, we have a model that's trained, but taking it a level past that and say, okay, there's process infrastructure. There's a way we operate that guides this whole ship.
Yeah, yeah. I've become a big fan of the architecture of sprints and how you can plan out your work and budget your work and then demonstrate that you've done work. That's important to all of us. And I've used a couple of different systems for it, but it all comes down to deliberately mapping that out on paper and being able to explain it in plain language to somebody who maybe isn't a Jira administrator or doesn't practice Agile. It's a means to an end.
Can you walk us through? I'm curious, like for some of our maybe our new listeners in the field and folks that are just getting started in CS ops, can you walk us through like what you mean by mapping it out, like both the data and the process side?
Yeah, I think one of the skills that I came by early through being in tech support was good question asking. So discovery is the first step in that, and good discovery gets half of your job done right out of the gate. So a lot of the time, I literally will build a map through, Draw.io or Lucid, and starting broadly, you just kind of put big ideas on that map and say, all right, we know customers need to buy the product. Customers need to be onboarded. Customers need to be transitioned into CS. And then you take that map and you zoom in and you start adding nodes and complexity to it. And at the end of the process, I was going to say day, but it's many days, you wind up with what is a comprehensive visual map of what you're up to as an organization. And I find that that generates a lot of energy around accomplishing the end goal. And it like really clearly defines that it is an organization-wide effort. It's not just one person's job. You cross through departments as you go through these different lines, and it really helps to bring everybody together around a common goal.
Given given it's a cross-functional product, the customer journey, I think you're describing a customer journey. Like I'm curious who owns it or who how you see ownership on that. Is it something CS ops owns, initiates? Does the customer success team and own the customer journey? I'm kind of curious because I see it bounce around a lot, and you usually and sometimes it's this nobody owns it instead of everybody owning it. But like, how do you see ownership of the customer journey, or yeah, just how do you see ownership of the customer journey?
I think it really depends on the company and, the stage of maturity that you're at, but also the product that you're selling really helps to define that. A really technical product requires ownership by really technical hands, where more plug and play solutions, you might just be a relationship owner, and that's fine too. And then as far as maturity goes, you can't just airdrop this whole architecture of workflows and systems and processes on top of an existing business. You have to work to get there organically. And I think if I were to look back at my beginning as an operations professional, that's the message I would send myself, right? If I could send a message in a bottle back to my younger self, it would be, don't try and impose order all at once. Some things are meant to be chaotic, and it's okay. But as everybody kind of coheres around a common goal, there will naturally be more energy towards that order so that you can move on to solving more complex problems.
I like that. That makes sense. And I like the fact that you're thinking about, what you would send to your earlier self as well. Cause I'm curious, like, is there any other tips that you would recommend to newcomers or earlier selves?
Ask for raises more often. uh, I think I'm a bit biased, but I think having a background in service, in customer success or tech support, has really helped me because I can understand the reality for the customer. I can understand the reality for the boots on the ground. And it really helps me to empathize and build with empathy. That's a big thing for me. You run your systems empathetically, and you're trying to make other people's lives easier, both outside the company and inside the company. And so starting out in ops is fine, but having a background in one of those more service oriented, external service oriented branches of the company really helps to inform that.
Yeah, I feel like we could be long lost brothers. I was started in sport myself, but that was after my brief tour in finance, both in Texas. So I mean, except I'm not a blacksmith. So
That's fine.
yeah,
I'll teach you how to blacksmith, and you can teach me how to tie a bow tie, and then we'll be even Stevens.
okay. I think one of those is easier than the other.
Yeah, I don't know which though, man. It's
I know.
surprisingly forgiving.
Everyone can vote. Add in the comments which you think is going to be the bow tying or the blacksmithing.
And if you can make a metal bow tie out of it, then I think you'll maybe
Oh,
kill two birds with one stone.
I think
Might
I
be a
know what
little heavy
Matthew's
around
getting
the
for
neck, though.
Christmas.
I think do some neck exercises or back exercises, I guess it would be for the metallic blacksmithed bow tie. I love it.
Yeah, neat.
I love it. What do you see coming down the road for our profession, Thomas? AI is rearing its head or has there's a lot of movement in our field, and yet some say there isn't a lot of movement. So what do you see? Let's say 1, 3, 5 years down the road.
Yeah, I have always been skeptical of AI with where it's at right now, just because it is such early stage technology. It's easy to misuse. I think humans discover technology way before we're able to use it safely, right? Cars, we're still getting the hang of using cars safely. AI is kind of in the same space, but I do think it is inevitable, and not putting yourself in a position of at least knowing where it's at puts you at a disadvantage. So AI is a big part of it. Working with AI as part of your tech stack and your systems is important. I also think that the climate in 2024 and probably 2025 is going to lend itself towards dedicated CS ops people needing to spread out into revenue operations and being able to touch that side of the business more. Really gives you some durability in a rough job market, and lets you demonstrate on paper your value in dollars, which is unfortunately very important to everybody.
And
Yeah. Go ahead, John.
I just ask because I noticed you have a revenue ops title now, and you used to have more kind of CS or how what do you see the difference there? I guess, or is there a difference, or are you working on similar projects as you were under the CS ops umbrella as you are under the Rev ops umbrella?
Yeah, it's another one that I think really varies by company. I don't think anybody out there has been able to nail down what a customer success title actually entails. I'm sure you guys have spent many episodes trying to run that to ground. Um, for me, in this current role, it means that I equally serve sales and CS. And so that's got me hands on with a lot more financial stuff than I used to handle. Um, and as I said, it freaks me out a little bit. I'm super simple, man. $20 is a lot of money to me, but handling these deals kind of gives me a little bit more insight and also helps me build empathy with, the pre-sales and the sales motion that before in tech support especially was just the source of all of our problems. Right? It's like nothing comes to tech support that didn't go through sales first. But seeing that side of the process really has like a how the sausage is made connotation to me. And it's been very rewarding, in addition to being, I think, a sound move for my resume and my career.
And we've seen that a little bit, like people build upon their career and maybe started in CS ops and now are doing more like what you're just describing, like maybe more process or systems work that goes across go to market. I assume you're working in different systems like now as a result of that transition as well. Like you might be working in Salesforce or other CRMs.
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever been truly just a Gainsight administrator.
Okay.
I've had that title before, but regardless, you end up touching Zendesk or Jira or Salesforce is pretty invariable. And getting experience with those other systems, I think, makes you better at operating Gainsight and configuring those integrations. And there's a fair amount of just learning by osmosis. Like you're gonna see the data structure of CPQ eventually. It takes a while, but you will figure it out, and that makes you in turn better at running revenue operations as well.
I really, really like that because I truly believe that, maybe we're all carpenters and we should be able to use a screwdriver and a hammer and I don't know what else, like pliers and everything else, but like
Anvil.
anvil, yeah. And it
Yeah.
just, adds more to your tool belt so that when you do look for roles in the future, you know, whatever system they're asking about, how to use it, or you can quickly figure it out because you've already had so much exposure to other business systems. So I really like that strategy. I think that's great. I think more people should be applying that strategy and not just learning one system, but really getting much more like agnostic and able to learn quickly new systems and administer more things.
Yeah, I think the way that I like to kind of half jokingly frame myself is that I'm not super smart. I'm just very clever in a Tom Sawyer-y way. If you're very clever and resourceful, you'll figure it out. It just takes a curious mind and a fair bit of patience. But I've also never seen a sales force that wasn't uniquely damaged in its own way, right? They're all wild. So you can't transfer everything between jobs, but it is good to get that exposure and kind of start getting reps in.
Yeah.
It's that support analyst agent coming out in you like, I don't know how it works, but I can figure it out, and I will find the knot or the breakage and apply a fix accordingly.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that it really helped me do coming from tech support is thorough documentation, which I think a lot of people find tedious. Maybe it was previous jobs that lent this to me, but I enjoy thorough documentation and sitting down and just painstakingly recording things, problem steps, and writing tickets. It's a big part of my day, so it's fortunate that I like doing it, and I take a lot of satisfaction in just a really well-written notification document or technical data flow diagram.
I like that. And I suspect as well, like there's some degree of like, once you've figured out customer data model or you understand it, to some level degree, like adding, the CPQ side, which is just like the quotes and the proposals and getting into more of the kind of the sales data, like some of that just adds another object, or it's just another, data record that just gets added to your dictionary, or maybe it's an encyclopedia of stuff. And so I suspect like processes are a bit different, like as you described, like sales is a bit of a different beast and they have their own unique processes. But when it comes to like actual data, like it's not a complete new different world out there that you're going to have. Like, it's not like you're going to Mars. It's really just an extension of the current world that you live in. And it's just maybe a little bit more info on quotes and proposals and the opportunities. But how do you see that? Is that the way that you've thought of it as well? Or?
I think that's fair. Nobody goes to Mars, but sometimes you do go to Quebec from Texas, and you have to adopt the local customs, and maybe they don't understand your accent so well.
Yeah.
But the underlying data is, at the end of the day, representative of something that actually happens. And so understanding what's actually happening and then putting the data into the context of that makes it make a lot more sense than just looking at the data on a screen. And that's where I really enjoy operations over something a little more technical, like being a software engineer. I get to put myself right in between those two worlds and enjoy, a low code environment because I'm not smart enough to code software. But I do touch logic, and understanding logic and how it plays into business is, I think, really a core skill in what we do.
That's great. So if anyone's out there listening and you haven't learned a new data set, or you're not planning to learn a new data set for 2025 or a new system, I think that should be part of your targets, your goals, just to keep expanding on that breadth and keep learning. I think that's great insight.
Absolutely. The data map for CPQ, for the record, is not one new object. It's like 58 interconnected objects. But I don't know that I've ever seen anybody use all 58 either,
Yeah.
right? Each business kind of picks and chooses pieces of the package. And so figuring out how they fit together here is really satisfying and important. And I would say starting a new gig, that needs to be part of your 90-day plan. You need to understand which portions of the whole system the business really relies on.
Yeah.
Yeah, prioritizing, you might say, what's important, what's not. Of the 58 objects out there might be 6 that are really critical. And I'm not saying where you stop, but I'm saying that's where you start. Then from there, okay, you figure out what comes next. To your point of, I don't quite remember how you said it, but like, okay, these are the stories we're going to deliver now, and these are the stories we're going to deliver later.
Yeah, being able to budget for things and serve the requirements that your business has really relies on you having a strong enough relationship with everybody around you to say, great idea, not right now, great idea, but never, and here's why. And then, ooh, that's the one, that's the great idea that we're going to do today.
How do you get consensus, or do you get consensus on, this is a great idea, this is a marginal idea, this is a great idea, but we're never going to do it? How have you conquered some of that? Is it fiat, this is what I say, I'm Thomas, or is it consensus, or is it somewhere in the middle?
Dude, one of these days I'm going to have that ability to just say, this is my will and we're imposing it. But no, it's radical candor, I think. You have to be open and vulnerable with people and say, look, that's a great idea from your perspective, but let me tell you why I think it's actually not right for us. And diplomacy gets you a certain amount of the way there, but putting on a false face does not. And you have to be open with people and in turn be open to being influenced yourself in order to be sincere and convincing and kind of generate that trust capital with your stakeholders.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you're just kind of threading that needle, and maybe to continue a poor analogy, sewing something together, different pieces of fabric with your needle and thread, and saying, all right, here's where we're headed for now, and here's where we're not headed for now too, and just transparently saying, this is important, this is not at the moment.
Yeah, and occasionally you spend a little bit of that trust capital because you say, "Up, I told you guys we were going to go to L.A., but we're in Sacramento now, and I hope it's good enough. Let's sit down and talk about where we've ended up."
Yeah.
Any other tips that you would give to folks that are just getting into the field or looking to build a career in CS ops?
Yeah, join the Global Gainside Admin Slack channel. Networking is really important. I think it allows you to check yourself a little bit, get an idea of how incorrect you may have been about things. Believe it or not, I've had my mind changed by discussions in that Slack group and elsewhere. And teaching people eventually becomes the best way to stay sharp and learn. So I have a great forum there to be able to just kind of like risk-free, willy-nilly fire off my opinions. And then we've got some folks in there who have known me long enough that they can say, "Hey, man, like that's a completely bonkers idea. You're completely wrong," and that's really valuable, right? But it comes from getting to know people and earning their trust, and in turn giving them trust back. No different than your stakeholders at work.
Mm-hmm. I really love that plug, not just because Matthew and I are obviously big advocates and fans of the Gainsight global community, but like working with your peers or learning and sharing with your peers, as you described, like there's so much goodwill. Like I think I've built most of my career on just learning and talking to people. And it's just so powerful as as you mentioned, like being able to share some thoughts, getting perspectives. So if you're not part of that community, get a part of a community. It may not have to be that one, but definitely start talking to people and learning from others in the field. We seem to have all experienced very similar things. And so there's a lot of shared wealth out there in the world.
And commiseration, right? It's no matter what unique problem you're facing, you're not the first one to have dealt with it. There's no chance that somebody else hasn't come up against a wall just like the one that you're facing. So at the very least, you'll get some camaraderie out of it, if not an answer. And I found that to be really, really nice to have as well.
And we jokingly always say commiseration, but what are your thoughts about like what is it about this field where we have that or where that's kind of a sentiment across the various practitioners in this space?
Yeah, I think we're all used to shifting requirements and deadlines that seem to change, and that's not unique to what we do. But because CS Ops sits right at the center of so many different silos within a business, you're bound to be the man in the middle for disputes about what is and isn't important or how to do things. And sometimes you just have to sit back and watch it, right? It's kind of like being an audience member on Jerry Springer. You just get to watch the argument take place. But eventually you come into your own and kind of steer those discussions and help everybody find common ground. I think that's an important thing to aim for, even if it doesn't always work out that way.
I like that. And we're definitely in the trenches together and working on new initiatives that perhaps are breaking ground in these companies. And so I agree with you. It's sometimes we're sharing this experience and enjoying to talk about it as well. So
Yeah, and who hasn't been sent an Excel sheet that's too large to open on your machine, right? There are certain things that are just funny and unsolvable, and I think looking back on those things and being able to laugh keeps you from being angry. So it's really important to be able to laugh at this silliness sometimes.
By all means, there's a lot of laughter in there, and you're the. I need to be careful how I say this. You're the source of a lot of it, Thomas. But I don't think we're laughing at you. We're just laughing with you. It's got some great content there in the Gatesite global admin Slack community. So, as we wrap up, I'm just going to go off the board of CS Ops altogether. You have a super interesting background literally there. As we were talking before we started recording, we know it's real. And so I have to ask what everyone's thinking, which is tell us what's over your shoulder. Tell us all about the red flowers that are over there. And
Oh yeah, they're Legos. It's a
that's
Lego rose
wow.
bouquet, so we never have to change them. And then over here, also Lego flowers, so very cool. And then we've got the metal chicken, which
yes, of course, no one
yeah,
was looking at the red flowers, but now I'm interested in it because they're Lego. But this chicken that's been peering over your right shoulder the entire show. What's up with
so
that?
the chicken comes from a holiday party. This is going to raise way more questions than it answers. We go to a holiday party with friends that is the Electric Chicken Christmas extravaganza, right? And there's an electric chicken there. It's a big, like disco ball lighted up chicken. This was door prize this last year, and it's quite a fine looking chicken, I think. But these same people are also they own a hot air balloon. So you'll see there are a few things up here to do with hot air ballooning. That's my other hobby. So I'm a blacksmith and I am crew for a hot air balloon.
Oh wow. And out of curiosity, like that top shelf, like what mechanical devices or I don't know what are those
So projectors, like
projectors? Okay.
I
Yeah.
don't mean to presume anything about you guys, but like overhead projectors and reel-to-reel projectors in school were a thing forever and ever. And so I've got here like a pretty good chronology of how they developed over the years. And I came by those more or less by happenstance. But my first job ever, actually, before getting into tech or anything, was working in a black and white photo darkroom. So I have a bunch of photography equipment, and this kind of came along with that.
That's awesome. It's way before Matthew and I's time. Just
Okay.
just so you know.
Yeah.
Let's stick with that.
But that's super cool, man. I like it. Thanks for thanks so much for sharing. It's been a pleasure just getting to know you a little bit more. Like as Matthew said, we've seen you in the community. You're always a barrel of laughter. You seem to have a lot of fun with folks, and people seem to have a lot of fun with you as well. Just the fact that you have an electric chicken party. I don't know. There's no additional questions required, but man, that must be a lot of fun. So yeah, pleasure having you on the show today. Really excited to share your story and just to share a spotlight on what you've done in your career and some of the best practices that you've had.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me.